folks, welcome to the Self-Love Sessions. I'm Polly. Thank you so much for tuning in. So in this session, we're going to be talking about the relationship, the intersection between self-love and Kundalini Yoga. So if you are following my Instagram account, or if you've interacted on there at all, at Northern Soul TV, you might have seen a little story that I put out, a little poll that I put out in my stories. And everybody voted for this specific subject as something to pop onto the podcast. We hear a lot about self-love, Kundalini Yoga being extremely effective, extremely quickly for bringing the practitioner back to the heart space. And maybe you've done a bit of Kundalini Yoga in the past, maybe you're completely new to it, maybe you struggle with self-love, self-compassion, feeling worthy and whole inside of yourself, and you're willing to try something. I mean, I've certainly been at that point in my life, and that's why I found Kundalini Yoga, because I was digging for something to help me feel good again. And lo and behold, this was the most effective technology that I have ever experienced, and I have experienced a lot of effective technologies. So it's a really grand subject. It's something that I want to talk about. It's something that I find extremely powerful for self-love, for coming back home to oneself. So let's go for it. I'm going to get straight into the topic today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. So from the minute we start a Kundalini Yoga class, there is science happening. Science that is working around every single cell of our being. So when we tune into a Kundalini Yoga class, we tune in, we simply tune in, we say a mantra, we say it 3 times. And when we tune out of a Kundalini Yoga class, we tune out with a mantra as well. And everything else in between has got this sort of specific order for a very specific result, right? It's like a scientific experiment that gets you from A to B in an extremely effective way. But from the minute we tune in with something called the Adi mantra, Om Namo Gurudev Namo. This mantra is not just some jazzy, like yogi, cliche words that you that's like some sort of cult or something, and we're all having to, tune into this strange language that we might not even understand. It's not that. That's not what it's about. It's about science. Okay, and so from the minute we start to tune into Kundalini Yoga, we are tuning into the yogic anatomy of the body, our energy. We are tuning into our mental, physical, spiritual, emotional capabilities, and our ability to be able to command those spaces from a deeper sense of stillness. And it starts so instantly when you get to the mat and you do your Kundalini Yoga, when you tune in, just those words are going to start to connect you back to self-love. So there's something in every single element of the technology that that's sort of figured out where the mind wants to get distracted, and it helps us to draw ourselves back into that technology. Every single time the mind wants to try and escape, it draws us back in. And that stillness, that connection is where we already have a deep sense of worthiness. We already have the connection to unconditional love. Because self-love and unconditional love are the same thing. Unconditional love is love without conditions. Kundalini Yoga helps us to break down those conditions, those walls, those barriers, those rigidities, everything that we form, all these high walls we form against our own self-love, against our own worthiness, against love in general. Kundalini Yoga helps to break down those barriers to bring us back to the wholeness that we already are, okay? So from the minute we tune in with the Ong Namo, Guru Dev Namo. Sometimes this is translated as truth is my identity. Let's make it a little bit simpler to understand. When we work with these sounds, we connect to something much, much, much deeper, which I'm going to get into in a second. But that depth that we connect to when we work with these sounds, these vibrations that work inside of the body, we connect to life, we connect to our life force, we connect to our aliveness. And our being alive, our aliveness is our truth. Our experience of life is our truth. And so when we tune in on Namo, Guru Dev Namo, we tune into our truth. We honour our life. And I'm going to move through just a tiny little bit of basic science around how that's even happening with the vibration. So when we start the Kundalini class, we bring our hands to prayer, Anjali Mudra. There's a lot of other stuff that's going on in this space, very, very simple things that are really activating different parts of the body. But, you know, I could go on about it all day, but we don't have all day. So let's just talk about this mantra and how it very, very quickly tunes you back into you and into your aliveness, back to your truth, back to your authenticity. So when we say Ong, we connect to the head brain. We have 3 brains, the head brain being the first brain. This is an analytical space, okay? We all know it very, very well. It's very important, it's there. But this tends to be the brain that we just work with, right? We tend to ignore the other 2 brains, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. We've very much been conditioned to work from this head brain, this analytical space. Everything has to be thought about so much. We have to make sure everything has a cognitive conclusion. Everything has to be filtered through the intellect. Whereas there's 2 other brains that are so vital for our personal growth, for our spiritual growth, or any form of growth, just for our self-love, that we tap out of. And I like to call these the untapped power. So when we tap into them, instead of tapping out of them, we can connect quite quickly. And this is why Kundalini Yoga is so effective for self-love. We can connect quite quickly back to a deeper sense of self, a deeper sense of aliveness that's not just the head brain. So let's go with it. When we say Ong, O-N-G, that sound works with the head brain, the analytical brain. Then we say Ong, we say Namo. Namo, the sound directs that vibration inwards and sends it all the way down to the navel, to the sort of belly area, okay? And this area is called our gut brain. Lots of emotions are held in there. Okay, so we've instantly sort of connected to that second brain as well. And then when we say Guru Dev, so we go Ong, Namo. When we say Guru Dev comes from the chest, from the heart space, and that's our 3rd brain. Okay, so we're connecting to these other spaces inside of us which are more intuitive. They're more directly in the inner body. They're in these very, very strong energetic spaces as well in the body. And we often lose connection to these spaces. When we lose connection to these spaces, and we lose connection to the heart, and we lose connection to the gut, we only focus on the analytical brain, the head brain, then we become very, very, very cluttered, very noisy. And when we're noisy and we are not still, we can't hear our inner guidance. We can't hear our soul speaking. We can't feel that sense of wholeness and love that, you know, is again coming from this heart space, that we already are. So when we're thinking about self-love, this is not something that we have to gain. It's not some of these superficial Pinterest quotes that you see, like, you know, I don't even have to say what they are. You know what I mean? These superficial Pinterest quotes that you see, and it's all about how we can slip self-love into our day-to-day life. And let's have a bubble bath. You know, let's paint our little fingers all pink and put some nice cherry lipstick on and have our hair doing. These are nice things, right? But it's not self-love. It's self-care, but self-love and self-care aren't the same thing. Self-love is something that we already have, but we're just distracted from it. And so as we tune into Kundalini Yoga, Om Namo Guru Dev, and we say Namo again at the end to bring us straight back down to the gut, because this is where all of our emotions lie, all down in this sort of lower triangle of our body. When we come back down into the gut, just before we start our Kundalini Yoga practice, we're going, right, okay, I am going to connect to this space. I want to feel it. I want to be there. I want to stop shoving it under a rug and forgetting that I have other spaces in the body that I need to utilize. I want to feel safe with my emotions. I want to be able to feel my emotions. I want to be able to know that I am there for my emotions and it is okay. I'm safe to feel these emotions, and also to help us to connect to that deeper sense of stillness that comes from activating all of these different brains. Okay, so very quick run through again. Ong connects to head brain, which is simply our analytical brain. We all know it very well. Namo sends that vibration down into the gut brain, emotions, gut feeling, allowing us to come back to that sort of the connectivity of our being, feeling rooted, feeling safe, feeling nourished, which is really important, right, in any form of yoga practice as well as in life. So just this mantra can help us to draw that energy back into that space. And then when we go Guru Dev, we open up to the heart space, which is the largest electromagnetic field in the body. Okay, it generates more magnetism than the brain. We need to connect back to this space to be able to give and receive unconditional love freely. Okay, when we don't connect to this space, the head brain wants to find conditions around our love. I will love myself when? I will love that person when? I will only love myself when I've succeeded in business, or I will only love myself when I look like this, or I can't love myself if I've got this, that and the other on my face or my body, etc., etc. This is conditional love. And when we don't tap into the heart brain, we just listen to that very mechanical, analytical, which is very helpful for lots of things, but it's not helpful if we're not using the other two brains as well. When we don't tap into heart and we're only tapping in here, we're going to find conditions around why we can't love ourselves now, or why we can't love that person now, or why we cannot give and receive love equally now. I'll have to wait till tomorrow. I'll have to wait till this. I'll wait till my bank account is X. These are all external things, external conditions that are blocking unconditional love. So that is the absolute first and foremost part of how Kundalini Yoga can very quickly start to bring you back into a deeper sense of self-love. It even happens in the first tune-in. It brings you back into your body, into a space that you are already whole. This wants to take you away from that, right? It wants to analyze things from the past and it repeats them. It wants to predict the fear of the future. And these are all fine things, but these are the things that are stopping us from self-love, because self-love is present. It's not in the past and it's not in the future. It's a connection to presence and awareness of the stillness of now. Because in that space, you're already in love. You're already in love in that space. So we must come back to the heart space. So that is how powerful Kundalini Yoga is, just from the initial tuning, okay? So that's just a little bit of science around the tuning that we do. It's not just this fancy, like culty, sort of daft chant that we're all doing at the beginning of the practice. It has really profound living technology around the way in which we're doing it. And as you start to move into the Kundalini practice, we then come to the breath, right? Well, we come to the breath first and foremost, but let's talk about the breath. When we come to the breath is self-love. This sounds like a crazy thing to say. You might think I'm sounding crazy, but if we're to really think about it again, if we already are love, if we already are unconditional love, and what we've done throughout our time in life from being a child to an adult is we've built up barriers, conditions around why we cannot have this unconditional love for ourselves, for others, because it's unconditional, right? So it's circular. It comes, what goes around comes around, yeah? It's just one big circulating energy. When we've built up all these conditions around that unconditional loving energy that come from, really it comes from the stagnation of the mind, then if we are self-love before the mind has created conditions to tell us that we are not worthy, or we don't deserve love, or we don't have self-love, even though we do, we're just distracted. We're too noisy in the mind. When we release these things, when we come back to the breath, again, we are connecting to that present state. And in the present state, there isn't any problems. There's no such thing as problems. And the no such thing as problems is also that connection to real unconditional love, because it's a feeling of being already everything that you need to be, being whole. But you can only connect to that truly and deeply if you come into that space of the present moment. And the breath is the most powerful tool on this planet that you could possibly use to bring you back to the present moment, because the breath is your center. The breath is life. It is the only true thing that sort of shows you that you're alive, right? When you can take an in-breath and you can take an out-breath, you are alive. And wow, what a celebration that is. We can be grateful for that, number one. And when we come back to the breath, in Kundalini Yoga, we do a lot of breath work. It's mainly a breath work practice with movement and sound, meditation, all these little tools that we work with in the practice. But it's very much about how can we move that, how can we work with the breath? Because the breath, through this prana, as we inhale, we take in the prana, our life force. As we exhale our apana, elimination force. These are two sides of the same coin. And when we breathe like this, we breathe in and we breathe out, we breathe in and we breathe out consciously by coming to the mat in a Kundalini Yoga practice, for example, and we work with a bit of movement or some mantra or, some mudra, some hand gestures, or even working with the eye gaze. Whatever it is that we're working with in our Kundalini session, we are working with it, with the breath being the absolute core to that, right? It's an anchor to the practice. And that's another way in which the Kundalini Yoga is very effectively bringing you back to self-love. Because when we come back to the breath, we come back to presence. When we come back to presence, we start to connect to all these other things inside of our bodies, the subtleties, our energy. The heart brain, which is about give and receive. The gut brain, which is about connection and nourishing. And we're not just in the analytical brain. Yeah, so we can quickly still that analytical brain, or still whatever it is that we need to still, any overthinking, anxiety, rumination of the past, predicting of the future, which is not promised to anybody, but we do it, right? When we minimize that noise by coming back to the breath and coming back to our center, and you start to practice this specifically through the effectiveness of Kundalini Yoga technology, you'll start to feel loved, because love is our true nature. This is our true energy. And it's all the other things around it, the conditions and the rigidities and the lies that we tell ourselves that aren't our true nature. So as we start to just be able to sort of like either release those things or watch those things from a more loving space, then we already love ourselves. So sounds very simple. It's not as simple, is it? Because, first and foremost, we have to get to the mat and actually practice these things. And our self-sabotaging obsession as humans doesn't like us to get there in the first place. So that's one of the first barriers that we've sort of built up against ourselves, is this inability to move towards our centre, because we're already stuck in those conditions that we've built up for ourselves. And that in itself is hard. So I always have compassion to myself, and you should have compassion to yourself. If you practice yoga, or you practice coming back to your centre, or you want to work with coming back to real self-love, which is essentially unconditional love without conditions, and feeling safe being yourself. This is real self-love, right? It's not bubble baths. They're nice though, but they're not self-love. But we've built all these conditions, all these rigidities, all these rules, all these reasons why we cannot connect back to the centre. There's so many distractions out there for us to not do it. We could scroll, and then once we scroll, we could answer a WhatsApp message. And once we've answered a WhatsApp message, we need to ring our friend or so-and-so or this. And once we've done that, we need to go to work. And once we've done that, we need to do this. These are all good things, fine, but the most important thing, I'm going to say it again just because I like to say things in threes. The most important thing is coming back to our centre, because without that centre, without that self-love, all the other things are very, very empty. And we can't come at them. We can't give our undivided attention to someone or something if we feel out of balance within ourselves, when we're not deeply connected to that feeling of worthiness and compassion. So there are lots of barriers that stop us from coming to the practice in the first place, but when we come to the practice, the technology works for itself. It is very magical in that way. It works for itself. Kundalini Yoga in itself is tens of thousands of years old. It was found in cave paintings. It was found in ancient Egypt. Some of the moves that we work with were moves that were used by shamans back in the day. In the ancient times, ancient shamans who didn't use drugs for healing, instead they use movement, and some of that movement has started to influence the Kundalini practice nowadays, okay? And a lot of these movements, they are very, very natural, okay? There's more than 80 plus postures that we work with in Kundalini Yoga, and each one of these postures, some of the moves that we're working with in these postures were done in the womb of the mother as an infant. So they've been done. We move the spine in all of those different ways, similar to what we do in Kundalini Yoga. We keep our energy moving. We keep squirming around, and we're not stagnant in that womb of the mother. And so that the movement that we work with in Kundalini Yoga is over thousands and thousands of years worth of healing modalities built into this amazing technology. And it comes from nature. It comes from nature. And nature is the greatest teacher. And so when we start to work with these things, and I'll tell you now, there's 3 main ways that you can move energy in your body and keep yourself feeling alive and connected to yourself. And that's the breath, that's movement, and that's sound. And Kundalini Yoga holds all of these 3 things. Every single time the mind wants to wander in a Kundalini Yoga practice, and it wants to overthink, or it wants to get anxious, or it wants to go back into the past, or it wants to bully ourselves or make us feel not worthy of something, or it wants to predict the future or hurry the practice so that we can get back to work so speedily. There's something in the Kundalini Yoga practice that minimizes every single time the mind's ability to be distracted in the moment. And so this is why it's so effective, because as we talk about, when we release these conditions that we've built up, when we release these barriers that we've built up against our unconditional love, that often comes from the mind and our inability to still the mind and watch it from a distance and connect back to the heart space and connect back to the gut and connect back to the inner body, our aliveness, our breath, our stillness, our being, our wholeness. It's already there. That is not lacking in anything. It's not lacking in self-love. So self-love is not about gaining. It's about releasing anything that's stopping us from connecting to that in the first place. And Kundalini Yoga works with those releases. It works with, it's put things into place in the practice that every single time the mind is about to find a distraction, I'm going to have to go down a rabbit hole of thoughts here. I don't feel good about this. How can I dig into that and not concentrate with my practice? Something will go, right, now we're going to stick the tongue to the roof of our mouth, turn our eye gaze to the third eye point in between the eyebrows, start to make a funny humming sound, do something weird with your hands, and guess what? There's so many different tools and different elements in the practice that the mind is preoccupied with those tools. It can't go down this self-destructive rabbit hole that is essentially leading us away from self-love, which is our truest nature. So that is where I'm going to leave it today, guys. I want to call this the untapped power. We have the power inside of us to love ourselves unconditionally. It's there. It's us. It's our true nature. We also have the power to put tiny little habits into our daily life, even if it's 1 minute, even if it's 3 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes. We have got that choice. We can connect back to our sense of authority in a day. When the mind wants to start to attack us, we have got the ability to connect back to our sense of authority just to do something for 1 minute, just to do something for 3 minutes, and then start to build it up with time. That's another very effective thing about the practice, Kundalini Yoga, and why it's helpful for self-love is that it's accessible. It was made sort of for household people, which we all are nowadays, sort of people who are getting by in this world, who've got jobs or who haven't got jobs, but we're still humans in this world. Us ordinary people in the world, we're not, meditating in a cave. We're here and we're working and we're living a normal life and we're getting by day-to-day chores, etc., etc. And Kundalini Yoga is made for these people, for us. Okay, and that's why it's so integrative, because we've got these small practices that we can do when the busy world, when modernity tells you don't have any time, which is an illusion anyway, but when it tells you don't have any time, there's practices in Kundalini Yoga that will allow you to fit in any time. 1 minute, you can feel the connection back to yourself in 1 minute with various practices, and 3 and 10 and 30 minutes. And that allows us to give ourselves the time, because we struggle with that one, don't we, as humans? So I can give myself 1 minute. Surely I'm worthy of 1 minute. If we're not worthy of 1 minute, then we really need to come back to the breath, and we really need to tune into ourselves. And that 1 minute turns to 2 to 3 minutes, turns to 5 minutes, to 10 minutes. And that's where the self-love starts to build in. It starts to sink into our daily life. It starts to go, okay, I can feel that. In this space, I didn't have problems. I was okay. I could cope with things. I felt good about myself. In this space, I am having problems. I'm feeling stuck. I'm not feeling good about myself. I'm feeling lacking in worthiness. But I can come back to that in just 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then the practice starts to unravel. You notice it works, that it's so effective so quickly. And then you give yourself that time. And that's how the practice works. It works over a sustainable period of time by just adding those little bits into your daily life, that movement, that breath, that sound, and honouring yourself, respecting yourself enough to give yourself just that tiny little bit of time to realise who you really are again. Remember who you really are again. Okay, so that's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want any more Kundalini Yoga or self-love tips, you can head over to my Instagram account at North and Soul, and I'm posting daily on there lots of different mini practices that you can do to bring you back to this centre. Okay, lots of love. Ciao for now. Hi guys, thanks for watching that video with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it means the world to me. If you would like to watch any more videos, there's 2 here just for you.